August 31st, 1999. Bogotá, Colombia. A frail-looking man in his late 50s walks into a government office to renew his national identity card. He moves with a quiet, unremarkable gait, a ghost blending into a sea of commuters. To the clerk behind the desk, he is just another face. To the world, he is the most prolific serial killer in human history. His name is Pedro Alonso López, a man who confessed to the brutal abduction and murder of over 300 young girls across 3 countries. After serving a mere 18 years, the legal maximum at the time, he was declared sane and set free. Shortly after that day in Bogotá, Pedro López stepped out of the office and into the crowded streets. He hasn't been seen since. Today we dive into the chilling forensic history of the monster of the Andes, the legal loophole that set him free, and the terrifying possibility that the world's most dangerous predator is still hiding in plain sight. To understand the scale of Pedro López's crimes, one must understand the geography of his hunting grounds. In the late 1970s, the Andean regions of Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador were fractured by poverty, political instability, and vast, lawless stretches of wilderness. López was a transnational predator. He didn't just cross borders, he exploited them. His modus operandi was as simple as it was devastating. He targeted the most vulnerable, young girls from impoverished families, often between the ages of 9 and 12, who worked as street vendors or walked alone to school in remote villages. He was a master of manipulation. López would often lure his victims by offering small trinkets or claiming he needed help. Once they were away from public view, the monster emerged. Forensic reconstructions of his crimes suggest a pattern of extreme, ritualistic violence, a signature that remained consistent from the outskirts of Lima to the mountains of Quito. When he was finally interrogated, the numbers he provided were so staggering they bordered on the unbelievable. He claimed 100 victims in Peru, another 100 in Colombia, and in Ecuador, his final hunting ground, he confessed to 110 more. For years, these disappearances were treated as isolated incidents. In the chaos of the late 70s, a missing child in a rural village rarely made national news. López didn't just hide in the mountains, he hid in the apathy of a system that wasn't looking for him. The reign of the monster ended not through high-tech surveillance, but through a moment of civilian bravery and a literal act of God. In 1980, in the city of Ambato, Ecuador, López attempted to abduct a young girl in an open-air market. He was spotted by street vendors who recognized his suspicious behavior. They didn't call the police immediately, they cornered him. Initially, López was just another drifter accused of attempted kidnapping. But then, the environment itself began to give up his secrets. A massive flash flood struck the region near Ambato, eroding the soil of a nearby ravine. As the water receded, it didn't just leave mud behind. It unearthed the remains of 4 young girls. Confronted with the evidence, López didn't retreat into silence. He began to talk, and what he said chilled the veteran investigators to their core. He didn't just admit to the 4 girls in the ravine. He led police to a site he called the Gully of the Dead, where he pointed out the graves of dozens more. But here is where the story shifts from a tragedy to a judicial nightmare. At the time, Ecuador's penal code was not designed for a man of the century, as López called himself. The maximum sentence for any crime, including multiple homicides, was only 16 years. Despite confessing to over 300 murders, the court could only sentence him for the crimes proven on Ecuadorian soil. He was given 16 years. Even more shocking, he was later granted a 2-year reduction for good behavior. During his incarceration, López was interviewed by journalists and psychiatrists. He showed zero remorse. Instead, he displayed a narcissistic pride in his work. He famously told one journalist, but his most chilling warning came as his release date approached. He looked the interviewer in the eye and said, "If I ever get out, I would happily return to killing. It is my calling." In 1998, the unthinkable happened. Pedro López was released from an Ecuadorian prison. He was handed over to Colombian authorities who briefly held him in a psychiatric hospital. However, after being evaluated as sane and having no further legal standing for detention, he was set free on a $50 bail. That 1999 sighting at the ID office in Bogotá is the last confirmed record of his existence. Think about that. A man who admitted to hunting children across an entire continent was given a new identity card and walked out into a city of millions. In 2002, Interpol issued a fresh red notice for his arrest in connection with a new murder in Colombia that bore his distinct signature. But the trail had already gone cold. There are three prevailing theories regarding the fate of the monster of the Andes. First, he is dead. Given his notoriety, many believe he may have been killed in an act of vigilante justice shortly after his release, his body buried in an unmarked grave by those who knew the law had failed. Second, he is living under a new identity. If still alive today, Lopez would be in his late 70s. He could be your neighbor, a quiet old man in a rural village, or a transient moving through the shadows of South America, protected by the very anonymity he used to hunt. Third, the most terrifying possibility, that he kept his promise, that the man of the century continued his calling, moving to a new region where the disappearances of the vulnerable continue to go unnoticed. Pedro Lopez remains one of the greatest failures of the international justice system. He is a reminder that sometimes the monsters we create in our stories are real, and sometimes they are allowed to simply walk away. The monster of the Andes didn't escape from a high-security prison. He was escorted to the front gate and let out. Do you believe he is still alive today, or did his past finally catch up with him in the shadows? Tell us your theory in the comments and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest mysteries.